we missing, let's see, John, right?
Yes. I don't see John on yet.
Right. But it looks like we got pretty much everybody else. Okay, so. All right, so I don't think you're plugged in here. All right, so just real quickly before I call the meeting to order, just as a reminder, as we do these Zoom meetings, that I'd like when we vote on something, just so that in case we have any audio issues, if you could vote on things both verbally and then either like give a thumbs up or thumbs down, so that way, if in case we have any audio issues, that I can at least see what your vote is there. For those of you that are doing both video and audio, so we will call this meeting to order, and I don't know if there's I think we can still see the flag there in one of those things there. So if we'll rise and for the pledge, if we can, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Roll call, Mr. Bray.
Here.
Mrs. Bremer. Gonna have to unmute her. Rebecca, can you unmute Mrs. Bremer? Okay. Mrs. Bremer, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Mr. Conley.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. McGrath.
Here.
Mr. Nixon doesn't look like he's here, so we will mark him absent at this time. Harrison Owens.
Here.
Mr. Watson.
Here.
Greg Owens is here. All right, I see Rebecca Johnson. Rebecca, help me out. Who else from the city is there with you?
I believe Mr. Mike Womack, city manager, and Shandell Napraski, the deputy clerk.
Okay. All right, excellent. So if we could take a look at our minutes from our May 12, 2020 meeting, and we will need a motion to approve those minutes.
I'd like to make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. And we have a motion and support on those minutes. Does anybody see anything on the minutes that need to be addressed, changed, clarified at all? Okay, so all in favor of approving those minutes, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries, thank you. And then I will make the motion that we approve our agenda as it's been presented to us this evening. Is there support for that?
I'll support.
Okay.
Second.
Anybody see anything on the agenda that needs to be addressed? Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, aye.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Agenda is approved.
Mr. Owens, Mr. Nixon just showed up at the meeting.
All righty, I see him. So we will mark Mr. Nixon as present with us this evening. Rebecca, are we putting a computer on for him so we'll be able to see him, or otherwise I can kind of see him in the
Yep, I think Shandell's working on getting a computer for him there.
Okay. All right. So public comments. Anybody that is either online. Well, let's do the online people first. If you are one of the folks that is joining us online and you have something that you would like to address with us, if you could just give us your name so we can, we know who's speaking to us, and then you can share with us.
Yep, so it looks like there are 3 people in the public comment. Mr. Owens, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Roland Brenner. If this person would like to make a public comment, please do so now. If you'd like to pass, please let us know that you're passing.
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, this is Roland Brenner, and I own a lot on Linda Street, 125 Linda. And I would like to approach the council to see if there would be an interest in receiving that piece of property as a donation from me for a children's park. And there's no park on that side of the area. And so I was wondering if you'd be interested in a neighborhood park there.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner. We have that under our new business for this evening, so we are going to be discussing that, and we certainly appreciate your willingness to make that available to us.
Then I'll just hold off and then wait until your new business.
Yep, and that will be coming up, and not too much down the line here.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next person we have is Atchison. I'm going to go ahead and unmute this person. If they'd like to make a public comment, please do so. If you'd like to pass, please just say pass.
I just can't change the name.
So it looks like we have Lisa Atchison, who's actually going to be Mr. Nixon.
Okay. All right. One other person then in the public comment. We have Gross. Is this person there as well, Mike? Going to go ahead and unmute Gross. If you have a public comment, please make your public comment now. If you'd like to pass, please just say pass.
It appears
Looks
that
like they may have left the meeting.
Okay. All right. I need to defer to somebody who's there in council chambers. Are there any members of the public there that would like to make a comment?
We do have 2 members of the public sitting here at City Hall. Ms. Powell, would you like to make a comment? Ms. Naparowski, would you like to make any comments? Okay. We have no comments here at this time.
All right, so we will close our public comments at this time. Folks just need to inquire if there are any conflicts of interest or ex parte communication this month on any of our items up for discussion. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our scheduled public hearing. So I will open this public hearing again, looking at the amending of these different chapters and sections regarding the marijuana uses in the city of Cedar Springs. Page 14 in your packet, if you need to refer to some of the more details that are there. But so since this is a public hearing, again, we will open this up to the public that would like to address us. So Mr. Johnson, if you want to do, we'll start with the online folks again as well, and then move to people in the council chambers.
Yep, at this time, there's one member of the public, Roland Brenner. If you'd like to make a comment on this public hearing, please do so now. If you do not have a public comment, please just say pass.
Pass.
Thank you. At this time, there are no other members of the public online.
Okay. Anybody in the City Hall chamber, council chambers that would like to address us on this?
We have 2 members of the public, but they have both passed. Thank you.
Okay, so we will close this public hearing at this time. New business that we have, as you heard Mr. Brenner, that there is an offer there to donate land that is at 125 Linda for the possible use of a city park. So that is, Mr. Womack, with that being in kind of a residential area, anything that we need to be aware of or think about with that?
Yep, so thank you. Unfortunately, I myself have not had a lot of time to, I guess, think about this. We were only approached a couple of days ago by Mr. Brenner to consider this. Under our ordinances, the Planning Commission has to review and make a recommendation on the City Council, and then the City Council can make a final decision about accepting any piece of property in donation from a member of the public. So a couple of things I would like to address is Mr. Brenner did indicate just a moment ago that he'd, I believe, some kind of children's park. And while I'm certainly not opposed to that idea, the development of a children's park with play structures can cost $20,000 to $50,000. Those things are just ridiculously expensive. And so the city's not in a financial position at this point to develop it as a children's park. An idea that we'd kicked around City Hall was the possibility of turning it into a community garden of some kind. That's something we do not have here in the community. And so we could maybe put some minimal child play structures in and then use the better part of the rest of the property for a community garden. The city would also probably have to consider installing parking of some kind. And so there are some minor issues to work out. And while I did not speak with Mr. Brenner at length about this, my code enforcement officer did. And she also indicated that Mr. Brenner wanted I believe, a bench with his family name inscribed thereon to indicate that they had donated that property to the city. But I'll let him talk more about any conditions he may wish to impose. From the city's perspective, it's a good deal, obviously, but we just may not be able to develop it immediately like we'd all like to do. But the city also has a water pump well house directly behind that location. And from what I understand, there's also an easement that runs through part of that property, which we'd like to obviously not have a house built upon, so that if there is ever any problem with that water line, we could more easily fix it. So I think it's a great deal all around. I just don't know if we're going to be able to make it a children's park immediately. Thank you.
Mr. Brenner, Rebecca, could you unmute him for a second? We'll just ask Mr. Brenner if there is anything that you would like to add or clarify with what Mr. Womack said.
It doesn't have to be a children's park. My main thing is that I just would like to donate it because I would like to do something for the community. The lot itself, I'm not going to build on it. And so it's not something that I need to definitely sell because of finances. I think it would be great for the community. The little kids in the area play in it already on that lot. It's got a great climbing tree. So if it was a garden, whatever, is perfectly fine with me. I also know that for me to sell the lot, which I could sell it, and I've got it up for sale. It's the cost on the lot. It's very expensive, apparently, to connect up to water and sewer because it's a deep lateral dig, is what I've been told. And so, anyways, so for me to say that I'm going to gain any money off from it, I won't, and that's not my most important part. All I know is that it might work out to be a very nice place for whatever you would like. So yeah, I have no issues with that. A couple things that I did want to ask for, though, like if I do have some conditions, is that I would like to have the city take over as far as paying for all the transfer of the title and everything over to you guys, rather than me paying for that. I'd like any tax forgiveness for summer taxes and stuff like that coming up, if that can be done. And this is kind of a stretch. I don't know if you can do this or not. I know that it's on Linda Street, which is a lady's name, and I'm wondering if you could call it Mary Lynn Park. Whether you use it as a community garden or whatever you use it for, I would appreciate that. That's all. Otherwise, I just hope that the community gets good use out of it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Mr. Womack, for the Planning Commission, then we're just making a recommendation to City Council to accept this land or not accept it, but we're not tonight. We're not trying to figure out what we're going to do with the land or how to work out all the details and that sort of thing. You're just looking for a recommendation from us, correct? One way or the other?
Correct. So under our ordinances, the Planning Commission shall review and make recommendation regarding any property that is donated to the city. And I think the idea behind that is, the planning commissioners are supposed to be the persons most involved with obviously the land and zoning in the city. And they should have a good knowledge, a working knowledge about which properties have, say, plutonium and uranium, dumped on them and things like that. So, I've driven past the property a couple times. It looks like a nice area. One of my staff people lives immediately next door to this property, and she's indicated that yes, the kids do play there. She'd be in favor of it becoming either a playground or a community garden. So I'm not aware of any real problems. As Mr. Brenner indicated, the DPW department has informed me that yes, the sewer line is 25, 30 foot deep there, which makes it a very cost prohibitive area to develop. But from at least my perspective, I couldn't think of any good reasons why we wouldn't want to accept it. But of course, the planning commission members, they live in the community. They've probably driven past this property 100 times. And any special knowledge that they might have about what's good or bad about the property is obviously invaluable.
All right. So just so that we can have a discussion on this, I will make the motion that we recommend to City Council to accept the donation of this property at 125 Linda Street. So is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a second. So folks, what's your thoughts, pros, cons, good ideas, bad ideas on this? Yes, Mrs. Berman. Oh, I think she's muted. Hold on one second. Okay, start again.
This is my first Zoom meeting. Have patience. So is the donation conditioned on those items that Mr. Brenner spoke of just now?
I would think that would be City Council's decision on those conditions, because we don't certainly have the authority to make those decisions from the Planning Commission. Is that correct, Mr. Womack?
Yeah, I mean, really, we're only asking the Planning Commission to weigh in on whether it's a good idea or not. The City Council can kind of hammer out the details. There was nothing that Mr. Brenner indicated that would be a deal breaker, for my opinion. I'm not entirely sure the City Council would like to go along with that name idea. City Council, at least in the time I've been here, likes to name things what they like to name things. And then the sub parts of that. So not, the park name, but, the park bench or the whatever. Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement with that.
Okay. Any other comments from the Planning Commissioners? Yes.
I mean, I'm fairly familiar with this piece of property, and I think it'd be a great place to put a park. I don't see any issues with it.
I agree. I, for one, have been going past that piece of property for years. My cousin lives on that street, and I'm very familiar with it. And I think it'd be a great location for a park. You don't see many parks around this side of town. So, and it's a really nice spot, actually. It's a very pretty location for one. So.
Any other thoughts? All right, so we have a motion and support to recommend to City Council that they accept the donation of 125 Linda Street. So all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no? All right, motion carries. So, Mr. Brenner, I'm sure that as this moves through the process and City Council begins to talk about this, you will definitely be kept in the loop on that. So thank you for making that donation available. We appreciate it. All right, folks, so let's turn our attention back to our old business. The last month, and let me just add my thanks again for the great work last month of going through all of those questions, kind of line by line by line, and really digging through there. So our responses to those questions, then Mr. Womack took to the City Council, and it really came down to, I think out of those 14 questions, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We just had 5 where the City Council's vote was slightly different than what our vote was, and so that's why it's kind of been sent back to us again as well to address this. So I think that there's really no reason going through all of the questions again. That I believe that we were in agreement with City Council, that we're kind of on the same page there. So, Mr. Womack, if I could ask you, we'll start with, I believe, question number 4 was the first one. Our vote at the Planning Commission level was 4 yes and 3 no. The City Council kind of flipped that around. They did 2 yes and 5 no. And Mr. Womack, I think you had some thoughts as to why that vote was different.
Sure. So I think that vote was different because I hate to say it this way, but I was able to better explain to the City Council. I think you guys were my lab rats that I was able to kind of talk through the questions, and the questions and answers that you guys provided me gave me the better ability to explain the kind of the implications behind that question to the City Council. So, as you guys know, later on in those questions, we addressed other aspects regarding retail stores, specifically whether they'd be able to operate as a standalone store or as a co-located business. So with the additional explanation, I think the council felt that they, wanted to allow it, which, is my fault. I'll accept responsibility for that one, but I think you guys were generally in agreement. The vote just reflected differently, I think.
Right. So we voted 4-3 to allow marijuana retailers in the HC district. They voted 2-5. So they didn't want it there. So
they didn't want it there as a standalone business. I think that's kind of what I get out of it. Of course, I can't put myself into the shoes of the minds of all the City Council members, but I think with my explanation of how maybe we can proceed forward by allowing it, but not allowing the HC district to be overrun by standalone stores, I think that's kind of what led them to vote that way on that question.
Okay, so in other words, you think that your question just stopped at, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate in the HC district, would be better stated, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate as a standalone business in the HC district?
Well, yes, now in hindsight, that probably is a better way to have addressed that question. Right. So again, thank you for serving as my lab rats and guinea pigs at the last meeting. I was able to then take that discussion to the City Council. I better explained it, I felt, and so of course they voted differently.
All right, so folks, let's kind of weigh in on that one. What if we change that question? So the question was originally that we voted 4-3 in favor of, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate in the HC district? If we change that to say, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate as a standalone business in the HC district, what are your thoughts on that? The City Council does not want that. They don't want them as standalone businesses. So adding that little qualifying phrase in there as standalone businesses, does that change it in your mind?
I think that we were kind of in agreement last time we met that we wanted them not as standalone businesses, and that we wanted them to have some kind of, that the retail part was an accessory to another business that was there. I think that was really kind of what our discussions ended up on last time.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I was on board with city council, so.
Yeah, sorry, I had to remember how I voted, but yeah, I think I was also on board with the way city council voted.
So, Mr. Hall, since you were present in both of those meetings, is that an accurate portrayal that city council felt like more of not just saying they can't be there, but they can't be there as a standalone?
Yes, I think a majority of the council wanted to have not have a standalone business there. Therefore, we wouldn't end up with 5 or 6 standalone businesses filling up some of the little strip malls there. Later on in the question, we require that the processor and the grower will have a standalone store to be out in the EC, where we left the standalone stores possibly be in the B2, B3.
Okay. All right. So for purposes of sending this back again to city council, then folks, what let me can we do our roll call vote again like we did last time, just so we get people to weigh in on this. So we're gonna modify the question with how we did it last time, or differently from what we did last time. Should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate as a standalone business in the HC district? And so I'd like you to vote yes or no on that. Mr. Bray?
No.
Mrs. Bremer?
No.
Mr. Conley?
No.
Mr. Hall? I can't hear you, so can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
He asked if you could repeat the question, please.
Oh, so we're voting yes or no on this question. Should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate as a standalone business in the HC district? Okay, so that's a no for Mr. Hall. Mr. McGrath?
No.
Mr. Nixon? Can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Because I'm not hearing the audio. Okay, so no. Mr. Owens votes no. Harrison?
Nope.
No. And Mr. Watson?
No.
Okay. All right, the second question that where city council differed with us is on question number 6, the question that we voted on: should the city allow marijuana micro businesses to operate in the HC district? We, the planning commission, voted 1 to 6. So we voted 1 yes, 6 no. The city council voted 5 yes and 2 no. Mr. Womack?
So again, I can't assume what was in the minds of the city council, but my impression was that if they're going to allow and require that any retail store in the HC district be co-located with a grower or processor, that's getting awfully close to what a micro business essentially is anyways. So a micro business is, I think, 150 plants, a processor, and a retail store all kind of combined into one. So I think they felt they'd be hypocritical if they didn't then also allow what they had already proposed and required for retail grower processor. At least that's my impression.
Okay. So thoughts on that, PC members? Yes, Mr. Conley.
I remember at the time that we were discussing it, my personal philosophy, and I can't speak for anyone else, was that I was trying to create a situation where, since there are multiple aspects to this business, that there would be an opportunity for certain types of business in the HC and an opportunity for other types of business in the downtown area. It sounds to me like the city council, from what I'm hearing so far, has also taken a similar tack. They just flipped some of the businesses that we were talking about before, so that they still have a differentiation between the two areas, but they just selected the other. Do other people believe that that's what's happening here, or did anyone else notice that?
What was the micro business again? The definition of it.
Sorry, I was just attacked by a giant bug. So a micro business would be a single business which would be permitted to grow 150 plants. They'd be able to process, and they would be able to sell at retail in one location. And the reason that's kind of important is because it's one of the few businesses that you can operate without having previously been approved of for a medical license. I believe the only requirement for the first 2 years for a micro business is that you be a Michigan resident. It's a smaller time business. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to operate and make a profit on. But I think it opens it up maybe to smaller, type groups versus these multi-million, Walmart of marijuana type businesses. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I guess I'm still trying to think how big of a building they would actually need square foot wise. And the reason why I say that is, could it still go in the B2 or B3 district?
Well, so one of the reasons I originally proposed that we allow it in the B3 district, they're not currently permitted in the B2 district, is that there are some warehousey type buildings up there in the B3 district. Particularly on the east side of the road, kind of sandwiched between North Park and Main Street. So some of those older automotive type businesses, which look like pole barns, might be sufficiently sized and appropriate for a micro business in the B3 district.
Yes, Mrs. Brimmer.
With a micro business, did you say they can grow 150 plants and process and sell?
Yes.
I think I still go back to the original from our vote last month that micro business should be in the B3 district and not out at highway commercial. And that's why I think I voted no.
Sure. Yes.
I'm still in favor of allowing it there. I think I agree with city council that we're, by requiring multiple uses on the properties anyways, we're getting pretty close to that. And whether or not it is financially viable for them to be in that area, I don't think is for us to decide, and I think that if they can fit within the space requirements, and clearly they'll be underneath any other requirements that we are setting on that area, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't give them the opportunity to try and make a business work there if they would like to try.
Any other thoughts on this?
I guess my only other comment was to try and drive business downtown was another reason to try and get the micro businesses downtown.
Sure. All right. So let's vote on this again. So this is, again, the question that I'm going to ask you to vote yes or no on is, should the city allow marijuana micro businesses? So again, if you heard the definition from Mr. Womack, a micro business is they can grow up to 150 plants there, harvest, and have the retail. So it's the whole setup there. Should the city allow micro businesses, marijuana micro businesses, to operate in the HC district? So we're talking about specifically HC there. Mr. Bray.
No.
Mrs. Brimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. McGrath.
No.
Mr. Nixon. Yes. Mr. Owens votes yes. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Watson.
No.
Okay. So I have 6-3 on that one, yes to no. All right. So the next one is question number 9. The original, or the question there was, should the city allow marijuana retailers to co-locate on the same property as a grower, processor, or excess grower in the HC district? Our vote was 1 yes to 6 no. City Council again voted 5 yes and 2 no there. Mr. Womack, any thoughts on that?
So similar to the question number 4, I think this was kind of a case of the city council knowing where they wanted to go, which was the surprise question number 14, that they would allow retailers out there, but only if they co-located as a requirement with a grower or processor. So I think them having that additional knowledge, which I'm not entirely sure I properly conveyed to the planning commission, I think changed how they wanted to vote on this question.
Okay. Right. Thoughts, anyone? Mr. Owens?
I am in favor of this. I think that if we're going to require the retail shop to have some of this, one of the other businesses on there as well, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be a co-location situation if it's all going to fit under the same amount of square footage and things like that. I don't think it really matters if it's all in the same business or if it's a co-location situation.
Let's not get hung up on the word co-location. I only say that because, and let me clarify again, I apologize. I think it was a situation where in this question, it's a permissive, saying, well, we will allow you to do it. And then later on at question 14, they said, well, now we're going to require you to do it. So it's kind of an either or situation, really. If you're going to agree and approve with number 14, then this question doesn't really matter because yes, permissive, but it's required to run. So,
well, if we were in agreement on question number 14, then do we even need to weigh in on 9?
Well, aren't you just full of the good points? Probably not. But you know, we kind of had all these questions. You could skip them if you want. But
Well, I think you know, in light of what you just said, I think if 14 makes 19 really kind of moot, then I don't see why we even need to. I think we've already addressed it, so we just.
Well, and of course, this is your prerogative as the chair, but you know, sometimes it does help to have the discussion. If for no other reason, then sometimes brilliant minds come up with good ideas that we wouldn't have otherwise had we not had the discussion. So of course, council does benefit, and of course, I benefit from the discussion you guys do have. But I'll leave it to you as chair.
All right. Well, yes, Mr. Conley.
I was wondering if and you as a chair can make a decision either way you want to do it, but if the issue is that 14 kind of determines what 9 has to be logically anyway, do you want to hear what we have to say on 14 again to make sure that we still agree with that? Or do you just want to go on? Because we could take the questions out of order if it makes them, if that satisfies what Mr. Womack is looking for.
No, I think 14 was a pretty solid yes vote from both PC and city council. So I don't know, unless somebody feels really strongly about changing that. We can still vote on it again if you want to, but or we can just stand with I guess maybe that's the, let me just kind of throw that out there. Do you think that 14 really just kind of makes 9 sort of a moot point?
I personally do. I was just being charitable to other members in case they wanted to discuss it.
I think it does as well, but
If I could ask, I guess I'd direct this at Mr. Womack. If the only question, I guess you said not to get too hung up on it, but do we need to determine whether or not both those locations there have to be under the same business, or if they can be 2 separate businesses on the same property, or is that kind of out of our purvey?
Well, and I hate to be pedantic, but using the word business is also problematic because under these ordinances and under the state law, establishment has a meeting, business has a meeting, all these things. So can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Do you mean buildings? Do you mean that whether they have to be all in the same building for co-location purposes?
Yes, I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Okay. So, and again, this is kind of properly addressed later on a separate question. But one of the questions that was approved is that these out in the HC district specifically, the retailers, growers, and processors would all have to be located in a building, or I believe buildings, of 20,000 square feet or less. Now, it's probably not a good idea cost-wise to put up 2 separate buildings, each totaling a combined 20,000 square feet. But at least my understanding was that the council left that open as a possibility. I suspect that they're simply going to put up a 20,000 square foot one building and co-locate all the businesses within that one building. But I suppose it's possible if you have an 18,000 square foot building that they could build a separate 2,000 square foot building on the same piece of property and still be under the 20,000 square foot threshold.
Okay.
Is that something you think needs to be clarified for the city council one way or the other?
No, I think that kind of clears up the confusion that I was having with that. I think that wording that we have in there already makes it clear enough.
Okay. Yeah, and I apologize. Obviously, this is all very complex stuff.
Right, and we had a real marathon session with it last time.
all right. So I kind of get the sense here. So if I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but if I kind of get the sense that we're in agreement that the fact that there was a strong yes vote on 14 that really makes 9 a moot point. So we can just move on and not have to really address that one. Are we good with that? Okay. All right. So I would like to take the next one out of order. I'd like to go to number 11 because I think that the vote on 9 really kind of went to 11. Again, it's 11's question was, should the city exclude growers and processors from the HC district? We voted 4-3 yes, which and then the city council voted 1 yes, 6 no. So they wanted to exclude not exclude the growers and processors, or flip it around. They wanted to allow them to be there. And we kind of by 4-3 said not. So am I correct, Mr. Womack, that probably came off of that number 9?
Yeah, this is, I think, probably the only one that there's really I guess, a policy difference between the Planning Commission and the City Council. It's just one of those things where I think the City Council took a look out there. They saw some of the buildings that are maybe being underutilized, and they're of sufficient size that allowing growing and processing out there might put them to better use in the future. So this is entirely a policy decision, I think, between the Planning Commission and the City Council. But obviously, if we're going to require that retailers co-locate with growers and processors, you then have to accept that growers and processors would then be permitted in the HC district. Or, I guess alternatively, you'd be saying, sure, you can have a retailer, but only if you have a grower processor. And by the way, growers and processors are not permitted in the HC district, which is kind of a logical fallacy.
Mrs. Bremer, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I'm totally confused. Would you read number 11 again?
Should the city exclude growers and processors from the HC district?
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bremer, is there something I can help explain or? Mr. Owens, do you have the Planning Commission vote on that question?
I think Rebecca probably does. I don't, since I had to move computers, I don't have it up on my screen right now. Do you have? Was
Yeah.
the minutes from last month?
Number 11, Planning
Yeah.
Commission voted 4 yes, 3 no.
Okay.
Ms. Bremer, any follow-up questions or statements? Do you have any follow-up questions or statements based on that?
All right. So like I said, we were close. I mean, we were 4-3, so we were even kind of pretty evenly split there. But the city council was pretty, firmly in favor of allowing growers and processors there. So thoughts on that? So our options are we can defer to city council and say, you know what, we were kind of evenly split. And so if you feel strongly about that, then we just go ahead and allow those growers and processors, or we can re-vote again and send back and say, no, we feel really strongly this way. And so we'd like you to reconsider. So what are your thoughts? Mr. Conley?
If we take the vote again, then that will kind of inform by the process of having the vote whether or not we feel strongly about this one way or the other.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So this is what we're going to vote on. Yes or no. Should the city exclude growers and processors from the HC district? Should they exclude growers and processors from the HC district? Mr. Bray?
No.
Mrs. Bremer? Yes. Mr. Conley?
No.
Mr. Hall?
No.
Mr. McGrath?
No.
Mr. Nixon? No. Mr. Owens votes no. Harrison Owens? So no. Mr. Watson? No. Okay. So we have 1 yes and 8 no's. Okay. All right, and then the final question that we had a uh, disagreement on, and it's kind of interesting because our vote was 3-3 and 1 abstention, and City Council voted 3-4. So even among the two different bodies, there was not necessarily a unanimous decision there. So should the city increase from 100 feet to 500 feet, the separation distance between micro businesses in the I-1 district from all properties in the R1, R2, and MU districts? Okay.
So if I could jump in, one of the holdups, and I believe Mr. Conley, you were the abstention on this from last time, was I don't think the Planning Commission felt fully informed about what the implications of those distances were. You know, I have the benefit of working on these ordinances for months, so I have a pretty good idea of what it means. But the idea is there are a couple locations kind of around the White Pine Trail and Ash Street, the White Pine Trail and Cherry Street, that kind of border upon the White Pine Trail that I believe would meet the 100-foot separation requirement. In other words, there are some buildings there that are right now being maybe underutilized, that if we keep it at 100 feet, it's possible for a marijuana micro business to purchase that building and start their operations there. So the policy would kind of be, do we want to allow or encourage a marijuana micro business, which could potentially have a retail store along the White Pine Trail? Or if we increase that distance to 500 feet, you would be essentially taking the policy of excluding micro businesses from the downtown industrial district. In other words, saying we don't want a micro business or a retail store of a micro business to be fronting along the White Pine Trail so that people can't take their bicycle or their rollerblades to the marijuana store.
Sure. Could you clarify the 100 or 500 feet from where? Private R1, R2, or is it from industrial?
So the proposal, well, so the current requirement is that to locate on any of the industrial properties, you would have to be at least 100 feet away from an R1, R2, or mixed use property. And if you guys have stared at the zoning map, I'm sure a million times, but this question is primarily dealing with the industrial section in the downtown area focused around Ash and Cherry Street. So, if you've spent the time playing around on Parcel Viewer, you'll see there are a couple properties that probably will fit this 100-foot separation. And you will notice I did not include the R3 area there for various reasons. But it's basically saying, do we want to allow a micro business to operate along the White Pine Trail or not? That's really kind of what it comes down to.
Okay. So let's just let's vote on this again with that information in mind. Like I said, I mean, we were kind of evenly split. So was City Council. So we'll just we'll vote again and let them sort that out how they want to do that. So again, we're going to vote yes or no on should the city increase from 100 feet to 500 feet the separation distance between micro businesses in the I-1 district from all properties in the R1, R2, and MU districts.
And Mr. Owens, just if I could add a little clarification, I think if you're voting yes, you are saying that we do not want a micro business to be located along the White Pine Trail.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bray.
No.
Mrs. Brimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yeah.
Mr. McGrath.
Yes.
Mr. Nixon. Can you hear me? Mr. Nixon?
He can hear you. I think he's trying to get visual
Oh, okay.
indications.
Yes.
He's yes, okay. Mr. Owens votes yes. Harrison Owens votes no. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we have yes, there's 7-2. All right. So guess then, so in I will I'm not sure exactly how to make this a motion, except that I guess that we that I would move that we recommend that all of the things that we have voted on today get forwarded to City Council.
So if I could just clarify maybe a little bit. So, and Ms. Johnson, maybe you could step in if I've stated this incorrectly, but by my estimation, in counting the votes, the only question that the Planning Commission currently, now after today, is not in alignment on with the City Council would be that last question, number 10. The City Council appears to have voted 3 yes, 4 no. And I'm sorry, Mr. Owens, what did Planning Commission just vote?
7 yes, 2 no.
So we'll have to have some reconciliation between now and their meeting regarding that question alone, singularly. I believe every other question you guys are now in alignment.
I think so.
So perhaps a proposed motion could be a motion to recommend that the City Council adopt the ordinance as presented, accepting propose that you exclude micro businesses from the I-1 district to 500 feet.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Johnson, is that acceptable to you?
I have the motion.
Okay. Is that good like that? All right. So I will make that motion that Mr. Womack just proposed. Is there support?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay. All in favor of approving that motion, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. And that will take care of our old business. Under new business, and we specifically under discussion correspondence, we wanted to try to hold off on some of these things until we can have a chance for the public to be more able to attend some of these meetings. So in your packet, there's a memo in there on the White Pine Trail overview that Mr. Johnson put together. A draft for that zone, that kind of overlay on there. So please look through all that, because in our July meeting, where we can be face to face again and have people there, we need to hammer out some of these things on here. And then also, Mr. Womack, do you want us to have any discussion on the front yard versus side yard tonight, or is that just for us to review and then have that conversation? Because I know you have a request from a citizen about a fence. Can we put that off until July?
Yeah, I mean, the citizen, thankfully, I think he's able to wait. I mean, I guess he doesn't have a choice because that's what the law says right now. I did not put it on there for discussion for tonight. Obviously, you can discuss it, but my preference is to wait until July.
Okay. All right. So that one is on page 32 in your packet. So make sure that you get a chance to read over that between now and our July meetings. Okay. All right. Ms. Johnson, any other correspondence that you've been made aware of that we need to know about?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, staff comments. Mr. Womack, you have anything else for us?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we have been putting some things off. So the July meeting, I don't want to say it's going to run long, but it might run long. Other than that, I'm happy to see everybody still kind of happy and healthy. COVID-19 did ravage a number of places in our country. And thankfully, we've stayed generally healthy here, both on the west side of Michigan and here in Cedar Springs. And of course, our country right now is in a bit of tumult. There's a lot to say on that, but hopefully everybody's staying safe and sane.
Okay. Planning Commission members, anything from you tonight? Mrs. Bremer.
I had a question about the marijuana law that it stated pre-existing public or private schools. We know that the land was given to CTA to.
Yep, so I'm aware of that.
expand their school.
I forget exactly
Have
what we
they
determined.
said anything
I'm not
to
entirely
you
sure it affects
about
much of anything. And
that?
we did change the law regarding R3 and growers and processors. So right now, the Brook, which is located kind of out in the northern part of there by the CTA, also has an exclusionary zone around it to 500 feet. So I can't remember if that goes all the way over to the CTA or not. Does it? Okay. So if not, it's pretty well taken care of. Oh yeah. So if you're looking at the other way around, so the CTA can't be precluded from expanding. Schools aren't affected by this. Only the marijuana businesses are affected by it. So in other words, if a marijuana business wanted to go, or they wanted to open up within 900 feet of the CTA, they wouldn't be permitted to, after that building was expanded into. Does that make sense? It would then become a legal non-conforming use. They wouldn't be allowed to rebuild at that point if the school was within 1,000 feet.
Okay.
And just for the members of the crowd watching, Ms. Bremer is actually in the same room as me, so I'm not just randomly talking to the wall.
Right. Yeah. Any other planning commissioner comments?
Okay. Right. Thank you.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank you all again for weighing in on this, and appreciate your patience. I know it's these kind of mixed meetings, partial, kind of some virtual, some people, it's a little slower trying to make sure that we're getting everybody included. So thanks, Stephen, for your extra patience there. Mr. Hall, as the city council representative, any updates that you need to pass along to us?
Well, I'm glad to see everyone here tonight, either virtual or present. We'll have a lot of things to do and work when the July meeting comes, and hopefully we'll get all this stuff taken care of and move forward like we always do.
Yes.
Thank you, one and all.
All right. So Mr. Johnson, our planning consultant, isn't with us tonight. Hopefully July's meeting, he'll be able to join us. So I think that about wraps it up. So is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Okay, is support?
Seconded.
All in favor of adjournment, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Thank you. We are adjourned. We'll
Thank
see
you, everybody.